I want to preface this review by saying this, as all reviews, are purely my opinion. I played Somerville first and beat both games for the first time within the last 24 hours. In fact, this is my first time ever playing any games like either of these two, and these are my thoughts on how these two games compare. If you don't know, Dino Patti worked on both games, as well as Limbo, as an executive producer and is co-founder of Jumpship, the development company he transitioned to after leaving Playdead. For that reason alone, not to mention the very similar style of both games, I felt this would be a fair and fun comparison. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and don't forget to subscribe and like for more. Somerville's story starts off as a regular evening, falling asleep on the couch to the TV, when all of a sudden an alien invasion befalls the sleeping city, and you, the main protagonist and your family, in the grips of fear descend to the basement. While hiding in the basement, a UFO crashes through your home, and the body of an alien astronaut lays with his arm reached out, begging to be touched. You walk forward to reach out to touch his hand, and in brief shock of light, you're knocked unconscious. Your family in grief believes you to be dead, and after a short scene of them crying over your body, they leave you unburied and assumedly distraught. You then wake up, the ever-concerned father and husband, to start the long trek to reunite with your family. Inside's story is told more through its environment and the moment-to-moment action. I'm going to be honest, while I loved what story I was able to interpret, there's little to no context as to ambition or end goal, and while I do think it could be argued from an artist's perspective the importance of the abstract thought it provokes and the many string theories that evoke from such interpretations, I do think the story here in general is a tad weaker. So, I am going to give story to Somerville. On a side note though, both endings did have me extremely confused, so I only had to go off of what I could tell they were about. Somerville's main puzzle designs are based off of melting and solidifying matter based on your needs. Strewn throughout, there are a few physics-based puzzles, and other puzzles as well that don't use this mechanic, but this is definitely the bread and butter throughout the entirety of the game. None of the puzzles in Somerville are particularly hard. In fact, I don't think there was a single time that I didn't know what to do. And that's a shame, because in puzzle games, if you never have that eureka moment, the game tends to feel like the puzzles were just there to pad out time, as opposed to challenge or show an innovative way to get from point A to point B. Inside's main puzzle mechanic, on the other hand, uses mind control. You, as the main protagonist, are able to put on a special helmet that allows you to control the zombie-like adults surrounding you. You can then manipulate them into, say, opening doors that would be too heavy for you as a child. Now, while I personally would consider this mechanic the bread and butter of the puzzles for the duration of Inside's story, there are a ton of unique puzzles that differentiate themselves in substantial ways and provide plenty of eureka moments for you as the player, while also never being too difficult to disrupt the constantly moving pace that the game strives for. This is an extremely difficult task, I think, for any developer, and Playdead's Inside handles this phenomenally. Inside takes the win for puzzles over Somerville in this category. It's not even close. Somerville and Inside are both very similar in regards to their soundscape, favoring the sounds of footsteps and scuttles of creatures to drive home the impact of tension and solidarity throughout your journey, as opposed to a background soundtrack. But they both do use music at key times, almost in a way to symbolize your silent protagonist's emotion. But which one used it better? Now, while I think there can be an argument for both in terms of which one was a better experience for you, I have to say that both of them were expertly done. And while I don't think that Inside would have benefited from more sounds because it fit the feeling of the game so well. For example, the silence as you tread softly through the forest, and then the vicious barks of an attack dog chasing you moments after are expertly done. But Somerville, in my opinion, was a little more memorable, and I mean incrementally so. With the sound of aliens in the distance and heavy rain throughout, the sound of tents blowing in the camp as you walk through, coupled with soft footsteps, and the soft sobs of distraught citizens displaced by an alien invasion. So, by a hair, I'm giving sound design to Somerville. The art style for Somerville and Inside both do share similarities, but I'm only going to talk about the differences here. Somerville uses both 3D and 2D design, which feels like an evolutionary step in the game design, though it doesn't all work according to plan, which I'll get to in the next section. But as a result of the game design, some of the camera angles are the most beautiful I've seen in a game, as you move toward a focalized point from the foreground to the background, and the camera slowly and expertly shifts with you. Somerville also sports a more colorful palette and detailed character design, but I will admit that at times the game looked more like a mobile game, and all in all, I wasn't in love with the art in the game. Inside, on the other hand, is purely 2D in design, and instead sports a monochrome palette. The game is highlighted in blacks and whites and shadows on the wall, with small splashes of color every once in a while. The big difference here, though, is this game was so obviously and painstakingly cared about for every frame. Every sequence in this game, I was picking my jaw up from the floor. The feeling this moving art evokes in this game is truly remarkable. Everything makes you feel small, and every inch has purpose. This game is pure eye candy and shows experts at their craft. And for that, Inside wins this category easily. Performance in Somerville is probably its biggest letdown. The game is full of immersion-breaking glitches and stutters, and annoyances caused by the same camera angles I praised in the previous section because of the difficulty of perceived depths that these angles caused. There's one moment in particular where you're reunited with your family, and when your wife goes to pick up your child, the kid just disappears for a second. And I reloaded the game to make sure it wasn't a one-time occurrence. But for that to happen in one of the emotional parts of the game, it absolutely breaks immersion. And the game throughout is just lacking polish and thought-out design, and it does really hurt the end-user experience. Meanwhile, Inside, just in its polish alone, is a masterpiece. As with the art style, every inch has been obsessed over, and I don't think you could do better than Playdead has in performance. And while, yes, it may be unfair to compare a game that's only been out for less than a month to a game that's been out for 2 years, in its current state, it's not even close. And Inside wins performance. Somerville and Inside, in my opinion, are both games that deserve to be played. But while based off the score on your screen right now, you may think these games are neck and neck, Inside is a juggernaut of a game that Somerville fails to meet, let alone exceed in terms of expectations. In an alternate universe where Jumpship took an extra year to work on this project, the story could have been different. I'm a sucker for a good alien invasion story from any perspective, but in its current form, the game is a 7, while Inside I can easily say is a 9.5. Take it or leave it. Thanks for watching.